Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live. There's also a PayPal and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly though, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your view on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Chocolate Saiyan and Sleeping Warrior. Good to have you both.
Yo, yo.
Good morning. Good morning.
I'm slightly amazed. Just had about 45 minutes maybe of non-stop screaming. My kid's teething, her back teeth are coming through.
Good
So
afternoon.
I thought, I might have to cancel this show. And then she's just too sick. And then literally moments before explaining to Anthony, look, I'm going to have to cancel this show. And then she just suddenly calmed down. So, but if you suddenly hear me disappear from the show, you'll know why.
Okay.
Hello.
Hello,
Yo.
Owen. How did Early Bird go?
Yeah, you started a little early too.
Yeah, just a smidge. I've got an appointment at about 4 o'clock, so wanted to get started a little earlier so we can finish a little earlier.
No problem. I started 5 minutes early too, so that was kind of funny coincidence.
Cool, good stuff. I might
What
even
you guys
try and do a
doing?
bit of housekeeping. Any signs of curvature?
Nope.
No, none.
None, Anthony? None at all?
Actually,
Nope.
depends on how you interpret the question. If you're a moron, ball, or retard that thinks that we live on a ball, then Conspiracy Cats has got a shout for curvature, apparently. Does that count for a sign of curvature?
Let's find out. Excellent. Always good when there's a sign of curvature, potentially or otherwise.
Well, I'll tell you what, let me finish this email. Let's go through the rest of housekeeping and we'll come back to it at the end.
Fair enough.
Because then we can include housekeeping on that point.
Oh. Any signs of axial rotation?
No.
No.
Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
No.
There is no distance to the sun.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
No.
No, sir. Not possible.
Any evidence that you can have a gas pressure without a container?
Nope.
No.
Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Nope. Just the aberrations.
What about the presupposition of Earth radius? The R value?
I guess they have to presuppose it until they get confirmation that it is actually glow.
That concludes the housekeeping. Thank you very much.
Yay.
So did that buy you enough time, or was that more concise than usual?
It was a lot more concise. Just ask Arwin about gravity for a minute.
Any scientific evidence of gravity? Did we cover that one?
Yeah, we did.
Arwin, this is the time when I need you banging it.
We actually need you to.
What?
Priceless.
Oh, you want to hear the details?
Yeah.
You want to know the aberrations?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the aberrations are the alignment of the relative density layers, the directionality, even though you like to call it relative, but can't really argue that only from a personal view perspective of the densities that you personify in that argument. And there is, well, the effects of the apparent downward acceleration force that you can interpret the effects in. It's another way of approaching it without scientific proof, nonetheless. But you can approach it, you can structurize it like that. It can work in calculations, in design concepts. But yeah, you can even do the tests. Remember, applying other forces, seeing how the alignment shift. Very important part of the aberration that suggests also gravity is a downward acceleration force that is present at all times in a stationary Earth. But yeah, since you can't actually directly negate gravity itself without introducing other forces like static electricity, like magnetism, like physical forces, explosion forces, you can't scientifically prove it, unfortunately, because that specifically requires you to manipulate the thing, the force in this case, as gravity is presumed to be, and you can't. You can only add other forces, and that is very painful to those who insist that gravity is an actual force, because it does look like it is a lot. You can interpret it very easily like this and even work with it in a technical sense. But unfortunately, there is no way to scientifically prove it at this time until we can understand what causes these aberrations to be the way they are. Until that time, it's nothing but an aberration, a ghost that suggests there is something. You can never actually grasp it. That good enough?
Just the right amount of word salad, I think. How you doing, Anthony?
We should do that more often.
Okay.
I'm nearly done, but I'll just delay it for a minute because it's I'm not going to be far behind. Okay, so evidence for curvature. All right, so Conspiracy Cat's brought a video out claiming that this stops the debate dead in its tracks. He misrepresented the position for a flat Earth and invalidated his claim, a point that he does not seem to have concluded or conceded, and his video's still up. And there's a load of bum boys that are all holding his willy, thinking that he's the new Rumpus or whatever. You misrepresented the claim on the flat Earth. If we live on a plane, you've totally misrepresented it. That invalidates your assertion that it debunks it brings the conversation to an end. You have to take the video down, or you have to debunk why it is that we're telling you that you're wrong. Okay. So we've calculated the angular size of the two mountains in question, and by that correct application of mathematics, otherwise known as perspective, we can tell that Mount Rainier will never be taller or appear to be bigger than Mount St. Helens if the Earth were flat. That's contrary to your position, Conspiracy Cats. Your position is that it should be. No. So your video is based on a false premise or premise. Some people call it premise. So you need to take your video down and remove the 10,000 views against that video, because you've literally deceived 10,000 people into thinking that the flat Earth position is somewhat different to what it actually is, which is our point. Perspective is a thing, and you deny it, ignore it, and refuse to address it, and your video is still up. So you've either got a very, very, very good reason why you have not removed that video, or your balls are over the blender and the blender's spinning, and you're waiting for it to hit the crescendo. So just in case that anybody thinks that we're waiting and that we're just, procrastinating, let's up the ante, because he responded to my video whilst we were live on Ranty's show. We dealt with it live, and people may not have seen it, so we're going to reassert the position.
Hey, Ronnie. Here we go.
Oh, shit.
290 people have been
So
we'll reassert the position. Either remove your video and stop deceiving 10,000 people, or prove why it's wrong. Angular size calculations proved that mountain can never be bigger than the Mount St. Helens in the foreground. I don't really care about the side peak point, because it's moot. You guys can't prove its elevation. We can't verify it or validate it. We don't know what the height of that side elevation is. and I've challenged you to present the evidence that supports your assertion that it is the way you claimed it was at that height. So far, there's been no response. Don't really accept that. You either prove what height it is or remove your video.
Hey, Riley, is it true that you targeted Karen P for sex? Or was
Hey, P, let's kick you out, because clearly this isn't an important point that you're bringing up. So I'm just going to bring it back on track immediately. So the problem we have is there's an assertion by conspiracy cats that Mount Rainier, which is a bigger mountain, should look bigger, even though it's further in the distance. In other words, by virtue of the begging the question, perspective hijacking, proof of nothing curve calculator, he is literally making the misrepresentation that the calculator leads you to, which is to say that a 250 metre high section of a mountain should line up with another 250 metre section of a mountain that's much further away, even though it's got smaller with perspective. Our very point. Things do not stay the same size at distance. Even though you can misrepresent them by giving them a feet and inches value, which will remain the same at any distance in an orthographic side-on view. It doesn't change the fact that something far away will look smaller. So to say it should be lined up in this way, no. That's a misrepresentation claiming that 250 metre high pole will line up with another 250 metre pole even if it's 100 miles away. Obviously, the further one will have shrunk right to the horizon and then vanished completely. So it's not going to line up with the top of the one that's right next to you. But that is basically his assertion. Mount Rainier's bigger, so it should be bigger. Really? No. It's further away. It's that simple. How can you measure such a thing? Well, the angular size, precisely as applied by Anthony. If you measure how big it should be in terms of its relative size, how we see things, then it matches perfectly with what the picture represents. The thing in the far distance looks smaller than if it was closer to you. Shock horror. That's perspective. The very thing we are telling you, not asking or inquiring about, telling you, has been hijacked. When you say, well, it's gone lower because it's dropped around Earth curve, no, it's got smaller because it's far away. So to assert that it should be this, that and the other height and stay that way in comparison to something in the near foreground, a way you describe an aspect of perspective, near foreground, far distance, these things are ignored when you misrepresent the way the Earth actually is. Obviously and observably flat. Yes, people generally appreciate that a cow that's a toy, if held up close to your eye, can look bigger than a real cow that's out of your window and into the distance. It's not actually bigger, it appears bigger. It's apparently bigger. Its angular size is larger, even though it's a toy. And the real cow is definitely bigger if you give it in a feet and inches value. The cow that is in your hand is 2 inches. The cow that's over there is about 5 feet. Well, the one's bigger than the other, right? Well, yeah, you draw that in side view and one's always bigger than the other. In reality, their relative size is dependent on their distance. That is a function of perspective. Now, you don't have that in your calculator, but you'll call that effect curve. No. Adam?
I missed it, didn't I? I missed the toy cow. Real
you did.
cow.
You missed the Father Ted example.
Yeah, damn.
This cow is small. That cow is far away. This mountain is small. That mountain is bigger, but far away, conspiracy cats. You utter retard.
So, you've got 2 choices, conspiracy cats. 1, remove that video because you are misleading people with disinformation. 2, justify where you get this value from. Did you blindly accept it from your friend that gave you the picture? Or did you annotate that picture yourself? And if you did, justify where you got the number from. Because that elevation of the side peak is wrong. And the reason why it's wrong is because we can use the prominence size of the mountain, estimate what percentage of the prominence size represents the bulge, then gross up the maths again to put it back to its full size, and then we can work out whether or not it matches what your claim is. And that's assuming that you've even got the claim for the flat Earth position correct, which we know that you don't. So either support your height for that side peak, or remove your disinformation video that's deceiving 10,000 people. You're a teacher. You've got an obligation to teach the truth, and you've got an influence that gives you a what's it called? I can't remember what it's called.
Privilege.
The special type of a fiduciary relationship as a teacher, because you're teaching people. You're acting as a teacher when you do this.
Oh, it's got a duty of care.
Yeah, a fiduciary relationship to all of your students. These are your students.
Sorry, Anthony. I just waited long enough. Hey, Captain Caps Lock, good to have you.
Hey guys.
I just want to give you a brief intro, if it's okay by you. So Captain Caps Lock was on with us the other day and essentially took apart what could have been held up as an ignorance of their main argument had it not been addressed by Captain Caps Lock. Now, the overriding issue is Anthony's point that he wanted, keen though he is, to get onto before Captain Caps Lock debunked their assertions by way of deducing what they have come to in terms of the height of this side peak, by way of taking the full size of the mountain from sea level and then taking an angular relationship, reducing off the top of it the proportion that the sea level to top of peak value would give you. And what Captain Capslock pointed out was if you take the prominence value and then do the mathematical deduction based on the angular size that it's reduced from, you get a much smaller section. And that is essentially debunking their straw man argument that means nothing when you have the main point that Anthony's banging, which is that ultimately speaking, the stuff in the distance is going to get smaller. It's far away. So to say it should be at this height because it's this height versus the same thing at the same height, no, it's further into the distance. So anyway, that's my introduction for Captain Capslock. I'm very pleased to have you here. Did you have something that you wanted to present?
Yeah, first of all, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
I thought about this topic a little longer, to be honest, the entire day yesterday. And I watched also the hangout of Slice Barcane, and they checked out the height on Google Earth, and it says around 2,000 meters. And then I thought that something else might be responsible for this. And I thought about the perspective. And if you would imagine that you would be at an elevation of 2,500 meters, or let's say of 2,000 meters, then the Mount Rainier should appear higher than the side peak. But if you, because you have the Mount Rainier and the Mount St. Helens in the same inside the same horizon, but as soon as you go down, your distance to the horizon gets smaller, and so I think that the lines of convergence affect only the visible horizon, and it can't represent the entire plane of the Earth like they put it inside their calculator. This makes sense.
Spot
Do you
on.
get my point, or I have to explain it a bit further?
Well, I'll tell you what, the proof of the pudding is whether Nathan can translate it into like layman's terms. Are you there, Nathan?
Well, it's basically another way of explaining the angle of view thing.
The angle of attack, yeah.
Yeah, the angle of attack, angle of view, how that affects it from another perspective. Yep. As I earlier explained, the optical slant.
The problem is, on a globe Earth, the horizon would be caused by a physical object. But on a flat Earth, the horizon is a visual phenomena. So this means that the lines of convergence, they end at your horizon. So you can do the real lines of convergence, like they have in their calculator, the horizon is in an infinite far distance. It's representing an infinite far distance. When in reality, they only apply within our horizon what we observe ourselves. So the foreground gets angled up stronger than something that is far, far beyond your horizon.
Yes, Ranty demonstrated this recently. So he showed that between him and I think it was, just have to cast my memory back, I think it might have been the tower in Blackpool. There's like about 9 miles, and it's represented when he zooms out of 60-70% of the frame, and then beyond that there's another 9 miles that in the full frame picture is millimeters. There's virtually nothing of it. But in other words, the further you go into the distance, the more it occupies that narrow angle. In other words, stuff gets smaller into the distance, and that's true for the plane you're looking across as well. At full zoom in a P1000, that last 9 miles is in the smallest of the angle of that view. If you were to zoom back out again, it's virtually indistinguishable, right? You've got to zoom into it. But ultimately speaking, the stuff that occupies the near foreground is absolutely massive and a much shorter distance. That's just how perspective works. I beggars belief we've got to do this, but this is what it boils down to. For the people who are on the fence, right? This is what it boils down to. Their world, Globehead's world, ignores perspective. That's the bottom line here. It doesn't have perspective in it. And what they say is the effect of things getting smaller into the distance, perspective. They call that curve. Whereas when we check things out and measure their angular sizes, we can just check how big they would be versus their distance. And it checks out every time. The world is flat. And it's just a hijacking of the very real effects of perspective. That's all they've done. It is quite simple. That's why it's shrouded in so much complicated obfuscation. This example from Conspiracy Cats is no exception. If you were on the fence, as opposed to just looking for confirmation bias, would you actually look at this and go, wow, this is really cut and dry. Yeah, this proves a globe. I mean, Jesus, we're looking for proof of R, and this is what the Globeheads are coming up with. Some really obscure and shrouded in deceit example with deliberate errors and traps laid. It couldn't be less cut and dry. This isn't a good example. This isn't a good globe proof. And when we really look into it, yet again, because it's based on the begging the question, perspective hijacking, proof of nothing, curve calculator that assumes its outcome, it ignores perspective. When you actually come down to their declarations, they say, this mountain in the background's bigger, so it should look bigger. Well, anybody with half a brain should recognise that, no, it's far away.
So let's just reassert the position. You either remove that video and stop deceiving thousands of people, or you justify where you get this elevation from for this side peak. And you get it done promptly because you are deceiving people, I'm going to assert, because I think you're doing it deceitfully. I don't believe that you've made this innocent mistake. I believe that you've calculated it, or somebody's calculated it and you've merely accepted it without any critical thought whatsoever and pushed it as true. Doesn't prove that the Earth is a globe. It doesn't kill the conversation, and you've got an obligation to your subs to do this properly. What are you going to do, Conspiracy Cats? Act promptly, because you're deceiving people, literally deceiving people right now by morons that now think somehow that I've supported your maths because you told them that I did, and I didn't. I dismissed your maths. Your maths went in the bin because it's wrong. Stop deceiving people, justify your position, or remove the video.
In the last month or two, so many videos of the angle of attack is being presented and the atmospheric conditions taking place in long and short distances. But no, ignore all that. All of that. Praise Miles Davis and his one photo.
Yeah, I think that's flogging a dead horse now. That one seemed to have gone now, thankfully. That one doesn't prove that the Earth's flat either. The same method and the same procedure applies against Miles, but he refuses to address it, and he's being fundamentally dishonest because he knows that there is a rebuttal against his position, and he simply refuses to address it. It's got burying your head in the sand, Miles. At least it's not dishonest. It's just deliberately evasive, which is kind of like dishonest too. But to be honest, Miles is just a moron. But this is a teacher. Teachers are not morons, and we have a bit of a grudge against teachers at the minute, because teachers are teaching children and people on the internet things like this, and it's wrong. It's deceptive, it's misleading, it's disinfo, and it's basically telling people that we live in a sphere when we don't. It's wrong. You can't prove it. Your maths is wrong, and you're a science teacher. Get it fixed.
And he's also failing to grasp the most simple parts of perspective that has to be explained to a retard on Father Ted in the most simplest of terms that we're explaining it, because his literal claim is this bigger mountain in the background should be bigger.
Is this thing on?
It is.
Oh, have you ever thought the teachers are hardly ever getting paid? And if they say one word against the doctrine, there goes the job and a paycheck.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that they're above the law.
No, they're not. The people forcing them to do this are above the law, unfortunately.
No, they're not. They think they are. They act as they are. The whole body of science.
Well, okay, maybe that's sorry, I apologize. They think they are.
Yeah, they act as though they are. The whole body of science.
No, but it's enforced by management, basically.
Yeah, that's right. It's enforced by management. It's
policy.
Because management's getting paid. See, it's all about paychecks and
policy.
And policy, yeah. Policy makes paychecks, though.
Yeah, and deception, indoctrination, lies, disinformation.
I mean, if you want
controlling a narrative.
If you guys want a really, like, lately I heard a really good one as far as like what policy and paychecks equals. Did you guys know that every single person owns their home in Sandy Hook?
Say that again.
Every single person in Sandy Hook completely outright owns their home.
That wouldn't surprise me.
No, but here it all happened on December 25th. There's the big joke that's going around as far as that one goes.
Oh, right. Basically, what you're saying is that they paid everybody's mortgage off if they're just complicit with
on December 25th of the next year. Keep your mouth shut about the hoax in your town, and we'll give you a house.
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me. How do you know that? Where's the evidence that supports that claim?
Actually, it's going around. There's a guy. Hang on, let me take a look. If you Google, I'm going in my history right now for YouTube, but there's a guy who's basically taking Sandy Hook to court, and that's one of the things he's got as far as evidence goes. But the whole town clammed up. And then he wondered, why would the whole town clam up? So he dug in records, followed the money, and guess what? The other big one, I don't know if you guys debated this one, that all the twins from the Challenger disaster, why weren't they at the funeral?
That's a good thought. Somebody missing.
Think about it. This is a twin, the closest person.
Yeah.
Not at the funeral. Wouldn't you show up to your twin's funeral? Your best buddy in the whole freaking world, technically?
Yeah.
I never asked that question. That's very interesting way to see it.
Yeah. But see, they don't want you asking the questions that literally kill them. Like this. If you can, I have figured out finally like how to convert people on any subject in 3 to 4 questions flat. And this is one of the ones that like basically says they're flat out. You can't believe this nonsense. I know I've seen a Sandy Hook video late a while back, but what's his name? Richie from Boston actually brought up the one where the twins were not at the funeral.
I mean, that may or may not be the case, but it doesn't prove anything in regards to the shape of the Earth. You can suggest that it hints at NASA fakery, which in itself doesn't prove or disprove the shape of the
why
Earth
would
either.
why would you fake it? I mean, think about it. If it's not, if space is also real, why would you fake it? I mean, I mean, the best one I got a friend of mine to say they faked the first moon landing. A lot of people go, yeah, they faked the first moon landing to beat the Russians. And then the rest of the moon landings had to look like the first one. But they weren't faked. Cuckoo.
What I see is, I think most dangerous is the people, the small YouTube channels, the ballers defending this narrative, because they say you don't have to look at the space agencies. You can look up to the sun and the moon and the stars, and it tells you it's a ball. Even though, I mean, I see it as a bullshit argument, but they see it as the strong argument. And some of the many flat earthers are questioning their this reality we live in, because they say, how does a two rotation poles work in a flat earth? And people are like, oh, I don't know. Come on, guys, really?
Well, the moment here's how you have to translate I don't know. Okay, I mean, there's two translations to I don't know. The first one is the obvious, you take the words literally, but the second one is the one that basically says I do know the answer, but if I tell you the answer that I do know, I'm going to sound even dumber than if I just say I don't know. So you have to ask them, which I don't know are you telling me?
It's okay not to know. The thing is, what I'm very passionate and angry about is the ballers pushing a narrative of they know it all and we don't know nothing. And they say we don't need any space agencies, even though it's garbage everything that the space agencies put up. The ballers say we don't need them because we just got this one picture and everybody's rolling with it. Or they got how does the sunset whatever work.
No,
And
they got
everybody jump in the
no,
bandwagon. They say, it's true, it's a ball,
No, they got mountains of evidence. That's what they got. Mountains of evidence. You ever talk to ballers, they'll say, we got mountains of evidence.
Yeah, they got mountains of pseudoscience and presuppositional beliefs.
You know.
They got a begging the question proof of nothing perspective hijacking curve calculator.
Oh yeah, I love that one. Actually, I really appreciate you bringing up the fact that R is introduced automatically into the equation.
Yeah, they're winning from the out. If they can get a flat earther to argue about whether or not the curve calculator has the right or wrong data, you're already arguing within the fallacy of the presupposition of an R value. So it's not useful. It's a begging the question fallacy. But as long as they can get you arguing inside that calculator, they've won the moment you're there.
Yeah, a lot of folks are really, but have you know, a lot of folks are just going on this fact that if you don't say it, you lose your job. Which is what we're all, I mean, the people that you're trying to convince, even if you convince them, you still don't get the elites to change the books. Can you imagine the Rothschilds saying it's okay to change the books?
Was that you clearing your throat and then biting your tongue, Anthony?
No, not really. No, I was just maybe.
I know what you're thinking. You're not allowed to say. I'm not allowed to say. But we're both smiling at the moment. Is that not right, Anthony?
I think so.
What, that Satanists rule the world?
Well, so in terms of flat Earth, let's get this back on track. What do you
By the way, you guys are running away from the fact that this has all been done to hide God.
Oh no, I'm not necessarily in agreement with that statement. I'm not against it, but I agree that it's hiding something, because There's absolutely no way that nothing exploded into everything and we ended up evolving from a donkey fish. So that's clearly not what happened. How we got here and how here even originated, it has to be donkey fish. Did you like that?
Retarded monkey fish, according to South Park.
Donkey fish was a lot better. Yeah, I like that.
Well, we realize that it can't be from that. That's the official narrative. We realize that can't be the case. I'm not saying, and I won't advocate that it is specifically God with a capital G, but there's definitely a God out there with a.
As long as they got you saying that, by the way, they also win. Because
no, I realize it's creation of some kind, but I don't accept that it's necessarily
do
God.
you know what? If you say the word creation, then clearly you should be talking about creators, right?
Yeah,
not a God, because God. The moment you say God, or you hear things like I'll give you a quick hint here. You hear things like God or one true God, especially if you hear things like one true God. That's straight out of a satanic Bible. That's somebody paying a lot of money to get the satanic Bible into mainstream society.
Well,
okay.
I don't care.
You guys can continue. You guys can continue talking about that. I'll just lay back and keep yawning and saying to me, "This is so freaking boring. This philosophy bullshit." But continue, guys. Thank you.
All right, so
Thanks,
right,
Jose.
you've just volunteered yourself to direct conversation.
Well, see, I mean, what would be your good way of explaining why they chose to do this? The only reason I can think of is if they can make a person doubt if there is a God or a creator, or if there isn't, then it would be pretty easy to sell them on devil worship, which is what Satanists would really be after, since they're the ones changing everything. Because everybody says they were Freemasons, but nobody says, wait a minute, Freemasons worship Satan. So technically they're Satanists. Why would Satanists want to do this? Obviously to increase membership. Because it's awful hard to come up and say, hi, would you like to burn in hell, scream in eternal terror for eternity? Would you like to do that?
Alan's fell asleep with cake in his mouth. Someone give him a nudge.
What's that, Tony?
You seem to have cake in your mouth, Alan. You fell asleep mid mastication. You've masticated yourself to sleep.
Often
do you need to take any of your own ribs out to masticate yourself?
I said masticate.
So I think the problem is, just to concisely sum up why people are snoring and pretending this is boring. It's not that it's boring. It's just we can't speak to motivation. We don't know why we've been lied to, and we may not ever know why we've been lied to. The people who lied, if it was originally formulated by people, I speculate, as a lie, then they may be long dead. So we can't speak to motivation of why systems that are in place that perpetuate this lie continue to perpetuate it. What we can do is point out the flaws and the deception, because we can tie that down very concisely.
Do you not see this as this was the same game they played back in the 70s and 80s, where Russia was basically trying to conquer the world, and all the rest of the world, the rest of the world was basically pointing fingers at where the bear already took a shit, and nobody's even debating where the bear is going to take a shit next. All they're going is, look at the pile of shit the bear made here. You know, and then they raise a big stink over the fact, look at the big pile of shit, right? But nobody's talking about the fact that in a little bit of time, in the near future, the bear will take another shit somewhere else. But let's not debate that. So let's let the bear go take the shit wherever they want to take their shit, and then we'll go yell about the shit we see on the ground.
Okay, well, in that analogy, if the shit is the heliocentric model,
constantly
polished dog
dropping,
turd, then What are you saying? That we shouldn't point out that the turd they're presenting as a fact is actually just a polished dog turd, and as you put
I'm
it, a
saying
pile of shit?
let's stop the fucking bear.
No swearing, no swearing.
Yeah.
So you're saying go after the government? Is that what you're saying? We should rise up and attack the government?
I actually, unfortunately, it's not the government, because you can attack the government all you want. I'm saying if you can get into mainstream media.
Hold on a second. Who's making
Sorry,
that noise?
sorry, I'm making some noise. I've just managed to get the noose around my neck, and I'm just trying to kick the chair away.
Yo,
There's no
Adam.
need to be rude, right? Look, if this is important to, is it Mark? It's Mark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Get
Mark.
it into me, because they don't wanna, they'll laugh it off. We don't have time for the meeting with the Flat Earth Society.
This is like a deja vu. The other day was Jonathan, and today is you. Thank you. I don't know. I don't know. You just joined the show and you're obfuscating, and this is dragging so slow and so tedious for everybody. You can see it. We're telling you in your face. This is boring. I personally, I don't speak for anybody. This is my own, my own opinion. I'm not interested in this philosophical bullshit and the why and the philosophical part of it. I like the optics. I like observations. I like what we see on the ground, what we can physically test and reach. I don't want to do these just so stories and the what if and then what is going to happen. I mean, I don't know. I'm sorry. I'm very verbal, but I step out of the way. I'll be quiet now.
Well, I don't mind as long as you pick up the pace and don't talk you're severely stoned.
This is the point I was going to get. There's a different platforms to do this. I don't think this is the right one. I mean, so that just saying that there's many platforms, many people that talk about these subjects. I never seen this Flat Earth debate Nathan show like taking this path. So I mean, I don't understand what you're talking about this crappy here.
I agree.
The way I see it, if the moment you can prove it one way or the other, definitely would not be wanted, because it will stop. It will actually give an answer. Unfortunately, the answer it would give.
All right, Mark, listen. Alan's making it obvious that he's fallen asleep. We all know that this is a conversation that's pretty dry, and it might be important to you, but it's not on topic, is it? Unless you can be more concise. What shapes the Earth, Mark?
Flat as a pancake.
Excellent. That's all we need to say. Anything that goes beyond that is conjecture, unless they can prove that it's not. So,
right, just for brevity, Mark, you can say whatever you like.
I know, but Alan's fallen asleep. Arwin's fallen asleep. Was it chocolate or Jose? Jose's fallen asleep.
No, I got some lunch, so.
Arwin's fell asleep and got a lunch instead.
I've listened to a few shows, and all it basically is that why you're getting picked on by the ballers. If you listen to the ballers, like basically streams, which on YouTube there's plenty of too, it's like basically the lines have been drawn, and you guys could use a new topic, because let's face it, if the moment a baller comes in here, he'll get ripped apart, and the moment you go on a baller show, you'll get, well, usually you guys get just tuned out, screamed at, and then tuned out.
What's the problem? That's exactly what we need. We need to show everyone what's going on, and they can make up their own minds and figure out what's actually going on here.
Yeah, I don't think they're listening. They're not really listening to what.
Out to Andrew John for the super chat. Thank you very much indeed.
The ones that are really interested and not just superficially clicking on something.
Oh, yeah. By now, I'm pretty sure the lines have been drawn. So why wouldn't you guys want at least some other ideas that are also floating around? Because space is flat Earth, technically.
Right. Well,
right?
No.
No?
If you want to go that route, then just follow my show. I talk about that stuff all the time.
Sorry, just to interject just 1 second.
Early bird.
The guy just put the super chat Mr. John, if you can put the link in, I'll approve it, and then people can click on it and actually subscribe to whatever channel you're recommending. But put the link in, I'll just approve it. Sorry to interrupt.
If you want cosmogony-related speculation, my channel is where you got to be. Because I talk about that whenever the opportunity arrives. If people want to know about it.
Just for balance, or any school in the Western world. Or Arwen's.
Right, but the difference is I don't claim it to be fact. I set out pretty clearly that when I enter into speculative or presuppositional territory, and schools don't do that. Teachers are usually not even educated enough to get that.
No, schools are being paid to push the satanic agenda because the whole object is to get to Agenda 21 or push Agenda 21, which is the universal citizen concept.
Right.
Not communism, which...
No, it's tied in with the Marxist agenda. They are definitely trying to satanize the place. That's true, but not all schools. It's not like automatically incorporated.
Really? The moment you see
the globe is automatically incorporated in any side, in any political side, pretty much.
Okay, but also if
the
you
satanic
see
agenda, no, not really.
Einstein pushed whose agenda in the end?
What?
Well, in the end, the globe Earth and anything that says evolution or globe Earth, space, modern medicine,
right,
modern religion, in the end can all be boiled down to the satanic agenda.
Nah, that's a very overgeneralization. Sorry.
Okay. You don't think
agenda is much more social based, personal perspective, demoralizing or like deregulating, moral conscious, all that. That's
Right.
real satanic agenda. Look, the globe is just an illusion.
Right. Stop. There's a better show
for mind control, and
there's a better show for this conversation. Let me recommend the Early Bird Show. Because in the Early Bird Show, people talk about stuff like this, and it's philosophical based and stuff like that. And
we do that here too all the time. I don't know what's the problem right now.
It's just boring. I'm bored of my school. I don't mean that in a bad way.
Well, then don't be silent.
I'd rather bully Alan with like whether he can prove the gas pressure without a container point and stuff like that.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen.
I'd rather that too.
Yeah, Alan. How do we have a gas pressure without a container?
I'll kick you up, Tony. Tony,
gravity, buddy.
Tony, you're fat. Nathan, you're a monk.
No, gravity.
Hold on.
Gravity pulls pulls all the air.
Hang on a minute. You do what Arwen does. You're not meant to argue their point for them.
So that's an excellent rebuttal. Thank you very much, Alan. Superb. Almost as good as Conspiracy Cat's rebuttal.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Nathan.
Conversation's already better.
I'm here to provide the best.
Right, that's not what I do. I don't argue their argument.
Yeah, that's good. Right from the chat. Right, I want you to take bets on how long this just takes to descend into total chaos.
Thank you so much for the insult, Alan. I feel relieved.
Tony, if a triangle is 1, 1, and 1,
yeah,
what are the angles?
60 degrees ish.
What does that have to do with stellar parallax or stellar angular size?
It's not a right angle triangle.
Exactly. That's my point. I don't care what it is or isn't. It's an irrelevant point.
I look for your excuse for that. I was having some tea.
If you listen carefully, you can hear the knives and forks on the plate in the background.
Okay.
By the way, could you guys help me out? Sorry.
I'd like to respond to that for a moment, to what Alan said. Look, triangulation, all that, it's really nice, and it's really nice how that's been incorporated into your model, but it only really works if you have confirmation that all the angles, all these things you are measuring comparatively are actual physical things, and you don't have proof of that. You only have the presupposition of that. So triangulation, yeah.
Here's a good one for triangulation. If you're standing at the shore and you're looking out basically as far as you can see from left to right, that's 3 times the distance as straight ahead. For some reason, left to right is a straight line, but straight ahead is a curve.
Yeah, that's conceded by Mick West. He changed his Metabunk curve.
Could you guys help me explain that or put some mathematical terms into it? Because when you start saying left to right, it makes them guys run away.
No. They did actually, as Anthony correctly points out in the advanced calculator, they now give a per pixel calculation for the amount that the edge should turn down. Because literally, from the ground, as conceded in the Metabunk calculator. Hey Mark, how you doing?
Hello gentlemen, we okay?
Very well, thank you.
The return of Mark Doxy. Look at that.
Return of the Mark.
What's
Return
up, Mark?
of the Mark, yeah. So yeah, as conceded, you should see.
Glad to hear you back,
I don't want this to get lost, please. So as conceded, you should see curve from the ground if you live on a sphere.
Yeah.
They got around that. What I was just hoping is someone can put the mathematical terms on the left to right in a triangle, because you can see 3 times the distance.
Tony, would you say that you guys were guilty of hypernormalization?
Depends on how you define it.
What's hypernormalization?
What
That's
is-
a new one on me.
what is that?
I love a big word. Go on, what's that mean?
What can someone explain the big word?
Well, you'd have to understand normalization first.
Well, hang on. We need the definition, not an explanation. What's the definition, Alan?
Hypernormalization is when you change real-world complex problems into simple fake ones.
No,
No,
that's
then,
called
definitely
reification,
not.
fella.
Wait. So you're saying you're taking
Hypernormalization.
something real and changing it into something fake?
Real?
No, normalization, guys. Yeah.
How do you do
I'll
that?
present.
I didn't
the
hear that word. It was a
definition.
bigger word than that.
Right, normalization. Here
No,
it is.
hyper.
It's not normalization, it's
Hypernormalization.
Yeah, but here's normalization. The process
Which has got
of
nothing to do
Yeah, but you got it wrong. Yeah.
something to a normal
That's the
condition.
wrong thing you're looking at.
How's it going, Flip-Flop?
Hyper.
So to answer your question, no, we're highlighting real problems, like saying that a mountain that's bigger, even though it's far away, should still remain bigger. See that statement
Wait, why do you
excludes.
care if it's
Mark,
bigger or smaller?
Mark, you might get it away with it with the guests. You definitely won't get away with it with me. Just let me finish my sentence. Thank you. So, by saying that a mountain that is bigger in a feet and inches value should remain bigger into the distance is an ignorance of perspective. So that's not hypernormalization. That's a very real flaw with your religious belief in the Earth being a sphere, as backed by the begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator, not hypernormalization as defined.
I find you all guilty.
It's ridiculous.
How about the
Thank
fact
you
that can
for
see
the
mountain?
hand wave dismissal to my rebuttal. Very, very good. Excellent, in fact. Thank you, Alan.
You're welcome, Nathan.
I tell you what,
When the mountain was mentioned, it was funny when Mark said, like, who cares if the mountain looks bigger or smaller? Yes, we all care. That's what we're looking at, Mark.
No, what I'm saying is the fact that you can see the mountain.
right, listen, Alan, you said your question was, do you think that we might be guilty of hypernormalization? And my response was, what's the definition? Now I'm going to ask you, can you give me an example where you think that we might be guilty of hypernormalization, please?
Yes, I'm sure I could.
Excellent. Let's hear it.
Yes,
Got 10
action
minutes.
going.
That sounds more like silence.
I'm doing it for effect.
Really? It's a really, really powerful effect. Well done. So, to answer your question, then, no, I don't think we're guilty of that claim at all.
So,
Yeah, but both
so
sides
when you
will say the exact same thing because both sides will swear that they're right on the shape of the Earth.
To be honest, Alan, I'm just watching Arwin's screen because he's accidentally sharing, and it appears that he's
not accidentally
a definition of hypernormalization that supports your claim.
And it's in the Urban Dictionary, by the way. It can't be found in the regular one. There is a
about
movie.
Have you made this shit up, Al?
Thinking about it, Alan, looking at a photograph and then going to a begging the question, proof of nothing perspective hijacking curve calculator to explain that, wouldn't you class that as hypernormalization?
I think, well, things like the sun and the distance to it and what it is, even though you guys choose to ignore spectrotomy. You just say, we don't know what it is.
Oh, what, Al?
You'd have to play it back, Tony.
Sorry, bear with me a second, Anthony. That wasn't the question I asked. You've answered a different question to the one I asked. Would you like me to repeat the question, Alan?
Yes, you can repeat the question.
Excellent. Would you not consider that looking at a photograph and then assessing it with a begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking calculator would actually meet the definition of hypernormalization?
No.
I would.
Yeah, me too.
Why?
I vote you're guilty. Do you know why? Because I can give an example that meets the definition. And taking something normal, like a photograph, taking it into the abstract world of a begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator, I'd say that meets the definition of hypernormalization. Interesting projection. Now we've unpicked your nonsense question that you asserted to us. It might be that you have a guilty conscience, Alan, and appreciate having read that definition, that you are actually guilty of hypernormalization. Well done.
Yeah,
Perfect
right.
analogy, Nathan.
The surreal state in which semantic basis of consensus reality is absurdity.
Yes.
So claiming absurd, illogical things that are obviously false to be true.
Flat Earth.
That is hypernormalization.
Not flat Earth, Alan. For example, saying that I can represent a view that is from my eyes by putting an observer in a side elevation to do the mathematics, that would be hypernormalization.
No.
Well, that's a hand wave dismissal, so I'll just repeat it because that's not a rebuttal. To take something as simple as a photograph like the one on screen and suggest for any moment or reason that we would need to take that into a side elevation view that ignores perspective, assumes a radius of the Earth it is taken upon, and gives us a side view of the side of our own head with a single line drawn between target and observer that ignores all perspective. That's quite a lot of things to do to just look at a photograph. For example, when I look at a photograph of the Isle of Man as a flat earther that you claim are a bunch of hypernormalizating people, whatever the plural is, you claim that when I look at the Isle of Man and say Isle of Man, that's not acceptable and we need to actually perform hypernormalization, taking it into a begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking curve calculator, assessing it in side elevation whilst assuming that we can see the side of our own head. So your hand wave dismissal is not a rebuttal, Alan. You are guilty of the very thing you've accused us of. The same sort of projection we're very used to seeing on this show.
That's
but exactly who's guilty of hypernormalization here? The
Alan.
People who originally gave you the picture of a globe, or the people that honestly believe it and are defending it?
And with that, I'm going to say, first and foremost, a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this live debate. If you hated the show, smash that dislike button, then smash it again. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. Also, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!